Shalom, Minister of Swords, begin no praise to Yahweh, Bashem Yahshai, Bashem Kodash. Double honors to the apostles of great Most High, and honors you brothers doing the work of the Most High in truth and in sincerity. Yahweh is the name of whom the world ignorantly calls God, Jehovah, Yahweh. His real name is Yahweh. And the Son's true name is Yahweh Shai. And when we pray Yahweh, Ba Shem Yahweh Shai, burning in, humming that, and Shem, meaning names Yahweh in the name of Yahweh Shai. Real quick, just wanted to, it's more of a tech lesson, if you will. I'm just trying to get a better understanding of the outage yesterday, caused globally, right? And really, it's just to go and show just how easy it is to stop the internet, right? So the whole point of the internet originally was to be distributed. Okay, so before, if you remember the days of, or rather, if you've seen videos of the days of exchanges, right, telephone exchanges, where you would call the exchange and then ask them to manually plug you in to basically call someone else. Right now, if you wanted to talk to someone, right, but then the exchange went down, then you were no longer able to talk to them, right? Now, if you're the military, this is a bit of a problem, right? If you want to get communication from one place to another place secretly and safely, and you've got this one choke point in the middle, right, i.e. the telephone exchange, right, and that goes down, then you have a problem. So then basically what was developed, I believe it was DARPA that developed it. You can double check me on that one, right? But basically whoever did develop it, the idea was, okay, instead of just routing through one telephone exchange, why don't we have different routes that you can take to get from point A to point B, right? i.e. then you create a web, right? So if you take down one telephone, rather one exchange, that's no longer an issue anymore because it can just use any of the other routes possible. Now, what you've got nowadays, you've got loads of large companies that basically serve and hold a lot of the traffic. Now, one of the things that caused a few of these incidences over the last couple of years is this idea of, yes, Google, yes, you may, let's say, have your service, like you may run your own service. You're not even using any of the big boys. You're not using Amazon. You're not using Google. You're not using Microsoft to basically have your website up, right? If you have a critical bit of infrastructure that is hosted on Amazon, because in software we don't build everything from scratch all the time. We build with what's referred to as packages. So if you have a package, say that is calling something in, like I said, that is hosted on one of these big boys, and if it's core to your application, and if your application is not built in a way resilient to it, what then happens is when that service goes down, your application goes down. Okay. So, for instance, recently a major auth provider went down. So, something that you use to log into an app, right? And then because that went down, all of the different apps that used that auth provider also went down, right? Just as an example, right? So the whole premise of this is just to kind of show and really exemplify just how easy it is to bring down, once again, the world's internet services, right, by just hitting a few key things, right? No longer a need to hit loads of different things. You just like, all right, boom, done, and it's gone. Okay, so I asked the robot, I said, considering that the whole purpose of the internet was to be distributed so that there wasn't one point of failure, how did yesterday's issue at AWS Virginia cause global outages, right? So it's like it's going to be a lot of reading in this one. Like I said, it's more information. Laws or precepts come to mind, right? I'll bring them out, and even on that, let's start off with this Amos 1:11. It says, "Thus saith Yahweh." 1:11. I'm not talking about 8:11. Salakia. I was like, what's going on there, right? But even there, effort, we can go and read it as well. The Spirit wanted it to come out. It says, Amos 1:11, thus saith Yahweh, right, for 3 transgressions of Edom, and for 4, I will not turn away the punishment thereof, because these, so you go and get it. all of these different things you're doing, all these little, scams and tricks and whatever, right? The Lord is going to judge you, because all you're really doing, right, is creating a ditch for yourself, right? Let me grab that as well. Psalm 7 and 15. Right, it says he made a pit and digged it, and has fallen into the ditch which he made. Right, so basically, all of these different things that he is doing, really, he's just making a ditch for himself. Right, he's the one that's gonna go in there. Right, scriptures talk about when he's about to fill his belly. Right, so for us, we're like, yeah, bro, like, do your thing, like, bring out the MOTB. We want you to do it. Like, go on, do it, boy, do it. Fetch. It's like it, right? But let me get back to this. What really went, right? But one's going to stretch one of the Amos 1:11 to come out. Right? Did I finish it even? Right. I didn't finish. I don't think. But let me read it again. Amos 1:11. For thus saith Yahweh, for 3 transgressions of Edom and for 4, I will not turn away the punishment thereof, because he did pursue his brother with the sword, and did cast off all pity, and his anger did tear perpetually, and he kept his wrath forever. Right? You read another, believe the precept, you're going to see here's Ezekiel. No, that's one of the precepts. Ezekiel 35:15, which talks about his perpetual hatred for the children of Israel, right? Which is why we're like, F this devil, man. Jake want to save him, but F him. Right, Amos 8:11 says, behold, the days come, saith Yahweh, right? It says that I will send a famine in the land, not a famine of bread, nor a thirst for water, but of hearing the words of Yahweh, right? And that's what we're coming into those days. So whether this was a trial run, whether it was a genuine issue that happened, even still, the point is still the same, right? Just showing that how easy it is for the internet to be shut down, really. Right, so reading the answer, it says, good question, is a bit of a paradox. The internet was built to be distributed and resilient, yet yesterday's outage, it says, caused widespread disruption. Here's what happened and why. Right, what caused the outage, right? Some of the known root causes, right? So the outage originated in US East 1, right, North Virginia. The trigger was a domain name system resolution failure, right? So then it's going to affect an Amazon's DynamoDB, right? It's basically one of the systems that they use to store data, right? Database, if you will. Right, so now it gives a decent example. DNS is the phone book of the internet, right? So you type in www.google.com. The server itself has no idea what that is, right? That has to become a IP address. So there is a table, if you will, right, that says, and to be fair, when we edit this stuff, like you literally do see it as a table where you will see, for instance, www.google.com, and then you will see that as, in fact, let me just show you. I think I can show you DNS lookup. All right. If I'll just use this website, if I just google.com. Right, and then we look over, bring it into here, right? So you see that there, google.com, right? A name, basically mean the name to the IP address, and as you see here, google.com, in technical term, resolves to one of these, right? So domain name, and then this is the IP address that it resolves to, right? So DNS lookup, right? So it says because DynamoDB, right, and other dependent services, once again, if your database goes down, and all the different services that are talking to the database, because it's like you've got the user facing website, you've got the back end logic that controls how how different things work. So like, for instance, when you put in a click forgot password, you'll have a back end service that will go, oh snap, I need to send a password reset email, right? But those will, first thing it has to do is like, well, who is this who is this email address? Who does this email address belong to? And if it can't touch the database, you got problems, right? So it says we're failing or unreachable. Other services in AWS couldn't launch instances, and then some more technical stuff. While the internet, and this is a key, while the internet's underlying network didn't collapse, many app websites fell because they depend on that region's infrastructure, right? So why did a failure in one region cause global outages? And this is a key thing, right? So although the internet is globally distributed, many companies choose to run their services or major parts of them in one large cloud region because it's cost effective, performant, and simple. Now, when you are talking about some of these websites, I think one of the things that is kind of hard to grasp is the sheer scale of the operations behind them, right? Something like for instance, if you want to, get one of these, high-paying tech jobs, you'll be asked to do like systems design and stuff like that. Something like Uber, where for us, the end user, the experience is just, here's my location, right? Let me put in an end location and then a driver will come, right? To make that happen, to have a live view of where the driver is, right? For both of you to be shown a different price on both ends. They take the piss out here, at least in London, where we pay a lot more than the driver gets paid. But that's beside the point, right? The fact that all of these different things are happening, right? Although they seem simple, you need a hell of a lot of computing power to basically have that system running, okay? Right? So building those systems yourself is very complex, right? And maintaining that infrastructure is also very complex. So most people, especially if they have aspirations to build a big business, will just use AWS, Google, Microsoft as an example, right? So it says further, some global services route many users through that region or house global infrastructure pieces there, even if users are elsewhere, right? That means a regional failure hits globally, right? So shared dependencies, many different companies, applications use the same underlying cloud services, databases, authentication, network infrastructure. When one of those underlying services goes awry, multiple top-level services that rely on it break. Once again, in software, we very, very, very rarely write everything as the term we'll use vanilla, right? Like if you've got a package that does authentication, you just use that, right? Because someone has done the test, someone has built it already. They understand what we refer to as edge cases, right? It's like, what happens, for instance, name forms are an example, right? Where it's like, actually not everyone has a last name. Actually, in some region, it's not called a last name because, for instance, the footballer Son Heung-min, right? Son is his family name, it's not his first name. Whereas in the way we do languages, Son would be first name, but it doesn't make so. Little things like that, right? You use packages because someone else has already thought of the problem, and especially if it's open source, i.e., lots of different people have helped fix it over time, then that problem is more defined. Rather, is better solved as a group than individually. So very rarely do we write everything ourselves vanilla, which once again means that we're relying on a lot of third-party software and third-party services. So once again, when these other services, if we are using them, goes down, guess what? Your application goes down too, right? Which is what, there is a school of thought, which, me personally, I'm in, where it's like, if you don't need that third-party service, don't use it. But certainly third-party packages, they have their benefits. Right, so continue on. Right, shared dependencies. Many different companies applicate. Yes, read that. Right, it says, as the Wired article puts it, failure of name resolutions or core dependency cause a ripple of downstream failures. Right, and DNS is pretty core to the internet. Right, because you're not out here. No one's out here remembering 142.251.167.100. Right, it's easy to just say google.com, innit? It's easy to just say that. Who's really gonna be sitting there remembering that shit, but I digress. So let's carry on, right? So there's assumptions of reliability and cascading effects. The developers often assume that cloud provider will handle redundancy, failure, etc., and many services do, but not always at full global independence. So it says when something fails in one region, failover might be slow, or clients might still try to hit the broken region, right? The load balancer and health checks failing made that worse in this case. The domino effect, DNS to Dynamo to EC2 to network load balancers, service availability. One line breaks, others follow. So you see this a cascade effect. right? So even though the internet is physically distributed, much of it rides on major cloud platforms. So even if your user is in London or Tokyo, your backend might still depend on infra in North Virginia. So then I asked, okay, so what are the main what? Oh, I meant to say who. Who and what are the main bottlenecks of the internet that can cause an outage? I know Cloudflare routes a lot of traffic, for example. Like, for instance, you'll go on the website and then after a while it will give you that error 502, and then you'll see stuff about Cloudflare, right? Cloudflare do a lot and actually were a cause of a failure a few years ago, right? So this is an excellent question. So it says there are critical choke points, right? DNS infrastructure, right? That domain name, given the Google example, right? Single points of failure, right? Google Cloudflare, Google Public DNS, Akamai, AWS Route 53, Ultra DNS handle a huge portion of global DNS queries, right? So want to take out most of the internet, you can just take out one of these bad boys, okay? For example, outages, DNS and DNS 2016 took down Twitter, Netflix, Reddit. Cloudflare, right, disrupted huge parts of the web. I remember that one, fun little one. That one, Route 53, right, that same year, right, timeouts worldwide, right. Cloud services. It says why it's critical, right. So these three, Amazon, Google, and Microsoft, host vast amounts of the internet's back end, right. Even though each has multiple regions, many businesses rely heavily on just one. Right, large regions like Virginia or Microsoft's East US host essential workloads. Right, I forget because I believe something like billing or something like that is only in Virginia or whatever. So it's like if you're trying to see someone before I serve this, has someone paid their bill, and then the answer's like, nah, they ain't paid their bill, then basically if it has to do billing checks before it does any actions and it can't touch billing, then you may have a problem. Not saying that's how it works. I'm trying to give an example, right? So example outages. So it says knocked out one in 21, 25, knocked out Slack, Disney Plus, and others. And Azure one in 2021 took down Microsoft Teams and Xbox. Right, internet routing and border gateway protocol. Right, says it tells the internet how to get from one network to another. It's the map of the internet, okay, right? BGP is trust-based and fragile. A bad route advertisement can black hole or hijack traffic, right? Large ISPs or backbone providers like Level 3, CenturyLink, Cogent, Telia connect huge chunks of the internet, right? Example outages, a BGP misconfiguration made their own DNS unreachable. The entire platform vanished for 6 hours. Right, so that's Facebook messed up, right? Pakistan YouTube BGP hijack, misrouted global YouTube traffic accidentally, right? Once again, just show you how easy this stuff is. One of the things that we're very much aware of, that this world of internet is gonna be at some point, no more, right? So it goes on to say, CDNs, right? Why it's critical. So like Cloudflare, Akamai, Fast, and Google Edge cache and deliver content closer to users, right? Powering huge portions of the web, right? Because let's say you've got a website that's it's hosted in America and you're trying to serve customers in New Zealand. That is a long journey, right? Even at the speed of light, that is still a long journey to be made. So what usually happens is you get what's referred to as caching. So the information gets distributed across the globe, right? Which is why sometimes you may refresh a page, you're seeing one version of a website. You refresh the page again, you see another version, and you're doing this, and you're basically, it may happen for like a couple of minutes until you get served just one version. That's basically your browser getting content from different content delivery networks, right? Whilst the cache is being warmed up globally, right? So once again, you take that New York example, right? You have a website hosted in New York, but certain things may be copied from New York to then Europe, to then, and maybe not even just from New York to then, Texas, to then California, to then, Korea, to then India, and then Europe, or wherever that needs to be, so it's closer to the user, right? And that just makes content even faster because people are impatient, right? It's speed is a very important thing in software, right? It says many websites don't host their own static content anymore. They rely on these edge networks, right? A bad config or software update at one CDN can break thousands of sites instantly, fastly. Single customers config change triggered a bug that took down Reddit, Amazon, BBC, and the UK government portal. Because that's what, through this, but I kind of realized that this was an issue on Sunday. It didn't actually become public until like Monday, because I wasn't able to access certain which called the HMRC, right? HM Revenue and Customs. Was trying to see how much tax they owed me, and it's funny because the page to pay the tax worked, but the page to show how much they owed me, that didn't work. I was like, okay, something's quite down. Because I tried another website, and then that was having issues as well. I was like, are these two related, right? Cloudflare, right, took out several major regions simultaneously, right? Identity and auth, so Google, you see login with Google everywhere. Okta, outages prevented logins across multiple enterprises. So if you work at a big company, one of the things they may want you to use is Okta, right, single sign-on. And then you've got then the major network exchange points and submarine cables. So one of my colleagues right now, he's in the Middle East region, and he basically was saying how his internet right now is kind of choppy because one of the undersea cables was cut. Okay, so Egypt cable cut severed 70% of internet capacity between Europe and Asia temporarily, right? Hong Kong, Singapore, so slowed Asia Pacific connectivity for hours, right? And then software on top of that. Okay, so then last thing, because one of the things I've observed and seen is just this idea that you've got loads of different providers around each like geopolitical block, right? So I said, who are the major players by region, geopolitical axes, right? I believe Alibaba, as an example, is a huge player in China. Okay, so I'll just I forget whether there was anything important, but you can just kind of pause and read for yourselves. I'll just go down to the summary that I see at the bottom, right? So you see here, right? So summary tables is North America and the West, right? It says AWS, Azure, and Google, right? So they basically run, I think there was something here that said 70% of the internet, right? So together the US big three, right? AWS, Azure, GCP control roughly 65 to 70% or 70% of the global cloud market now, whether that's including like smaller services, or whatever, because for instance here it mentions like Hetzner and stuff like that. I don't know whether they're classifying, because they've got cloud / hosting, right? So this, I believe, I would class that more. I'll class this more as hosting. I wouldn't necessarily class that as cloud, but it is what it is. But even still, that is a huge chunk of the world's internet basically being controlled by just those three, right? So it goes on to say China PRC sphere, right? It says Alibaba, Tencent, Huawei, right? Europe, right? You got OVH, Hetzner, AWS, EU. I can tell you for free, we just use this a lot. Mainland in England at least. I don't know what mainland Europe likes to use. Hetzner and OVH do give you like free data outside of your website. So that's the thing. That's one of the things you got to pay for. When you host a website, you got to pay for data that goes out if it goes over a certain size. And one of the things that it says about the EU is that the EU is trying to reduce dependence on US tech, right, via certain projects, right? So it goes on to say Russia, Eurasia, right? Yandex, VK Cloud, right? Indian South Asia Alliance, Geo, AWS as well, right? And then for Africa, Middle East, and Latin America, this is AWS, Azure, and Huawei, right? So, like I said, just more information. This one wanted to kind of touch on just the outage that happened yesterday, just kind of show what's happening, right? From an internet perspective under the hood. It's like I didn't really have much precepts come to mind. Like I say, it's more just an information, a kind of a deep dive, just once again, just showing how, yes, the internet is very distributed, right? Because you may say this, and people be like, oh yeah, but the internet's distributed. But it's like, hopefully now there's a little bit of a better understanding of how these different things are interconnected, and how these different things are, all come to play, and how easy it is for this whole system to just come breaking down, right? Because this isn't gonna be the last time. Of course, we understand. We understand. We read the precepts, right? Amos 8:11, right? Because one of the things I'll definitely say is, I've been seeing it happen more and more, right? Over the years, you see some of the dates that we were kind of seeing. It was a lot around 2020. It seemed like there was just like a lot. If I just which some of these may be duplicates, right? You basically, oh yeah, so because it's done, yeah. So we basically seeing some of these, right? Because it's once again, so you see something at 2008, then you see this one 2016, then 2020, 2020, 2021, 2025, 2021, 2021, 2021, 2022, 2022, 2020, right? 2023, right? Another 21 and 2026 and 2022, right? So one of the things I've kind of observed is that it's happening more frequent. So we can expect it to be more frequent, but just the way that the big E has set up the big boys to own so much of the internet just means it's going to happen a lot quicker, and then it also means that shutting it all down is going to be even quicker, right? So as always, Lord's will does edifying. Till next time we say Shalom.